Hello there. Welcome into a Thursday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the 100% free Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health. Mental health and well-being for all. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you, and you have the ability to give your take on all of them. The phone and the text line are the same for your convenience. 719-247-1313. Now, Sunday's game between the Broncos and the Bills isn't just about advancing in the postseason. Now, that's what it's mostly about. That's what the most important aspect of Sunday's game is. But, of course, there's a little familiarity with one of the members of the Buffalo Bills and the Denver Broncos, that being Von Miller. And that will be a storyline, as already a storyline. I don't need to predict the future. It's already happened. Von Miller was asked yesterday in Buffalo about going up against the team that had the audacity, the unmitigated gall to trade him in what feels like a decade ago. Here's Von's thoughts.
It's all love. I can't even start to play that delusion of it's hatred or I can't even start to play that game. That I will put myself so far in a place that's not even close to being reality. That would be it would be hurtful to the way I want to play. I love those guys. I love everything about the Denver Broncos. I pay close attention to the Denver Broncos.
And that, if you're a Broncos fan, that has to warm your heart, certainly, and make you miss the guy. But here's the thing. The Broncos did Von Miller a favor in terms of, now I can't speak to whether he's enjoyed living in LA or Buffalo as much as he enjoyed living in Denver. But from a professional standpoint, the Broncos did him a favor. So often the Von Miller deal is lumped in with the Nolan Arenado trade for the Colorado Rockies, right? This beloved generational talent that's being given away by the team and all that comes along with that. In both cases, the player that the team here in Colorado traded, they were doing him a favor. Right? The destruction that was going on around Nolan Arenado in the Rockies organization, starting with letting DJ LeMahieu go, it was for the best. Now, fast forward a few years later, it's not like Arenado has accomplished a great deal with the St. Louis Cardinals, and now he's looking to be traded somewhere else. But at the time, in pretty much the entire time he's been away from the Rockies, he's won more games with St. Louis, right? Had a better go of it. So Nolan Arenado was not a victim in that trade. The Rockies were the victim. You, the Rockies fan, was the victim. When it comes to the Von Miller trade, Von Miller should not have any animosity. Again, I can't speak to the lifestyle, living, having to move or whatever. But in terms of a guy who had tasted Super Bowl victory and still had the ability to help a team win a Super Bowl, he was not going to be able to do that in Denver. It just wasn't going to. So in that regard, the Broncos did him a favor. So I wouldn't expect Von Miller to have any animosity towards the team. And the way that Von Miller emoted after the trade went down, again, it feels like a decade ago. He had no hard feelings. He was upset because he loved Denver so much. But even then, when he made his statement on social media and anytime he's been interviewed since, there's always been this sense of, hey, my career is better off. I got my chance to compete for Super Bowls. The guy hasn't stopped competing for Super Bowls since he left Denver. Wins one in LA. Plays for Buffalo. Yes, he got hurt, but he's always been on a team that has had a chance to compete for a Super Bowl. He's better off. And it's great to hear that he still keeps up with the Denver Broncos. Because it really, and it's mostly because none of the guys he played with are here anymore, but Nolan Arenado never talks about keeping up. It doesn't seem like. Maybe he has. Maybe with Charlie Blackmon. But it's great to hear, but I wouldn't expect anything different. It was for the best. Now, the other aspect to that was the Broncos' return. And I remember at the time, I said, this is what rebuilding teams do. And I thought that trading Von Miller was the beginning of the necessary teardown and rebuild of the Denver Broncos. I thought that's what George Paton was going to do. Draft and develop guy coming from Minnesota. I thought that's what the first domino was going to be. It wasn't. They immediately took that draft capital and traded for Russell Wilson. So you want to go back, winners and losers? The Broncos lost that trade. And maybe they were destined to lose it anyway. But if they ended up with, let's say, Riley Moss and Nick Bonito with the picks that they got, then there would be a return on it. The return on the Von Miller trade was Russell Wilson. Broncos lost that trade. They were always going to lose it to some degree, but they got nothing for it. And George Paton had to chase his own mistake by then acquiring more draft capital to then go get Sean Payton to evaluate Russell Wilson, and you know the rest of the story. So, yes, the Broncos lost that trade. But I think you can look however many years later and say they're both in a better place. Right? Because here's the fact of the matter with Von Miller. As dangerous as he can be, he's not the player he once was. Okay, now imagine, if you can, Von Miller in terms of a production and health standpoint with the Denver Broncos all these years. What does that get them? And I would say Von Miller wouldn't even be on the Denver Broncos at this point, because at some point he would have been let go or traded. The Broncos probably would have gotten less. But the Broncos are in a better spot than they were when they traded Von Miller. It was a circuitous route to get here, but they finally got here. And Von Miller is certainly in a better spot. Now, if you could take Von Miller and put him on this Broncos team with everything else that's transpired, then, you know, maybe you like that a lot more. But the Broncos had to tear this thing down, had to rebuild it, and they've rebuilt it faster than anyone could have expected. And Von Miller has another Super Bowl ring. He has a chance to get another one this year with Buffalo. Everybody's better off. Everybody should be happy. Garrett Bowles was asked about going up against Von Miller.
I don't think I'm thinking too much about, the times that he was here or anything like that. I'm just focusing on, my teammates here, the guys that we have in this building. We don't have anything to lose, man. We're just here to play. They have more things to lose than we do. So we're just here to play our game and do the things that we need to do to get back on track to where we belong.
And that's 100% what Garrett Bowles should say. Because the Broncos have enough on their plate this week leading up to Sunday than to add another thing. And that's one of what Sean Payton will be doing this week, has done and will continue to do. He will get this team so hyper-focused on the little minutia, the weather. Remember, it was a couple weeks ago with the whole sleeves thing, right? With Cincinnati, right? It was supposed to be rainy and everything, and they revealed on the Amazon, or it wasn't Amazon broadcast, that was the week before, but they revealed on the broadcast that Sean Payton has a no sleeves policy when it's raining. Like, those are the little things that he has the team focus on, so they don't get, so they're so hyper-focused on their preparation for this game. Right? Even worrying about, am I allowed to wear sleeves or am I not? And that's part of why Sean Payton is good at preparing this team, because he gets them to hyper-focus on the task at hand. They don't need to spend any time lamenting that Von Miller's no longer a Bronco or worrying about what they're going to say to him when they see him on the field. They need to worry about beating his football team, because that's going to take quite the effort as it is. I get it. It's a perfect Wednesday story. It is. And I would be lying if I wasn't mildly intrigued to see how Von Miller plays against the Broncos and vice versa. It will be a thing, but it doesn't have to be a thing for the players. It would just add to the entertainment value of Sunday. But if you're a Broncos fan, it's great to hear that Von Miller still keeps up. And maybe you lament a little bit that the Broncos couldn't have done better post Super Bowl 50 to keep Von Miller around. There's certainly some of that, but you can't deny that right now the Broncos aren't in a better spot. And they couldn't have hung on to Von Miller that whole time. There was no way. And given what Sean Payton did this summer with Justin Simmons, again, I don't think Von Miller is on this team. At some point, Von Miller would have left. Where he was at in his career just did not match up with where the Broncos were. Or where they should have been. Because, again, they took the picks that they got for him and went out and got Russell Wilson. Both parties are better off. And that's what you want in a breakup. Right? As amicable or not as a breakup is, you just hope that at the end of the day, both parties are in a better spot and are happy. And gosh darn it sure seems like both the Broncos and Von Miller are happy in their current lives. 719-247-1313, just getting going on this Thursday edition of the show. Much more on Sunday's matchup. But I got it coming up next. I'm not going to help Deion Sanders anymore if he won't help himself. I'll explain next. I have spent a pretty good chunk of the last couple of years, really, pushing back against the notion that Deion Sanders would leave Colorado at this juncture. Right? As much as everybody was trying to get him to go, certainly he's going to want to take a bigger job. Certainly he's going to want to go to the NFL, and I keep pushing back. And on behalf of Deion Sanders, not that he asked me to do it, but I felt like he was getting to a point of being nauseated by the whole thing, like constantly asked about it over and over and over again. And I said, he doesn't want to go. Why would he want to go? Doesn't seem like the personality or what Deion Sanders gets out of college coaching. He wouldn't be able to get that out of the NFL. Right? That old Joel Klatt comparison where he says 95 Nick Saban and Deion Sanders are 95% alike. Right? A leader of young men shaping lives. Even a couple of weeks ago, I saw Deion Sanders was talking about how every college athlete should take a financial literacy course. Like, I really think that Deion Sanders derives a lot of pride from being able to not only get these guys to the NFL, which is the biggest step in their lives, but also to prepare them to be adults. And you're not going to get that in the NFL. You're going to get egos. You're going to get people that are fully grown, and whatever they're going to do, they're going to do. There's no ability to make an impact at the NFL level the way that Deion Sanders and these other coaches do at the college level. And then I said, why would Deion want to follow his son? Why would Deion Sanders want the perception when he already had to deal with the perception or is still dealing with it? And that's why this upcoming year in Boulder is going to be so fascinating, is because a lot of people are saying, without your son at quarterback, what are you? So why would you follow your son into the NFL and keep that idea that you're only getting jobs and you're riding the coattails of your son? I don't think any parent would want that perception out there, even if it was untrue. You won't want the perception that you're clinging on to your kid. So I did all this, and I talked about this because I believe it, but also I thought, you know what? Doing Deion Sanders a favor. You know, I don't normally do favors, but, you know, he's given me so much to talk about on a daily basis. I figure I'd pay him back a little bit. But those days are done, because if he's not going to help himself, then I'm not going to help him. Here's Deion Sanders on Good Morning America.
But is there a chance that you could head to the NFL?
I know where you're going. you
try
try to go viral, right? Yeah. If I respond, you know we're going viral, right?
I know, right?
You know what? The only way I would consider is to coach my son. Not son. No. Sons. Okay.
I hate that answer. And he fully acknowledges at the beginning there that if he says something, it's going to go viral. And guess what? To me, that's the wrong answer. If you really don't, because here's the other thing too. Why do you need to negotiate in public like that? Like, let's say for a second that, and I have no choice but to take him at his word. Okay, let's say, I don't know, a certain team in the desert of Nevada that is now clearing house, more on that in a moment, says to him, well, yeah, we're going to draft your sons. Why does he have to negotiate with that? If that's what will lure him, then if a team ends up drafting his sons, then he can reach out. He can back channel it. Or the team that is interested in taking his sons can tell him if they are interested in him becoming their head coach. But as I'm saying that, I know that nothing Deion Sanders can do can be private. I mean, what am I saying here? He has his other son recording every single thing that happens inside. So why would this situation be any different? So you know what? He wants it out there. He wants it out there. He wants a team to draft both of his sons. He is openly telling everybody, as much as he has spent the last 2 years saying, no, I'm happy with where I am. He's even said he wants Shador to go on and have his own life, yada, yada, yada. Clearly, he is amenable to this situation, where in Dallas or New York or Vegas, that if you have Shador and you have Shiloh Sanders on your team, you can get Deion Sanders. He wants it out there. So now you know what's going to happen, right? There are a lot of teams that would be interested in Shador. And Shiloh is an NFL player. I 100% believe he's an NFL player. But now what you are creating a Bronny James situation. Because Shador, anybody that drafts Shador, there will be some talk about potentially luring Deion Sanders to the NFL, but you could push back against that and be like, he's the best quarterback in this class. And if you don't believe that, he's second behind Cam Ward. That's it. That's the list. Okay, so there are a lot of teams that would want to draft Shador Sanders. Shiloh is a different story. Shiloh is not a first-round pick. Shiloh is not a sure thing. Shiloh, or perceived to be a sure thing. Shiloh does not play a position that has such high demand. So now you're putting Shiloh in a situation that LeBron put Bronny in. Except instead of just holding the Lakers over the fire and making them draft Bronny, Deion is doing it to everybody in the league. Or whatever team ends up drafting Shador. So now, anytime we see Shiloh Sanders go off the board and he happens to go to the same team, it's to get Deion. That's all this is. And now Shiloh is kind of this pawn to be able to lure Deion. Is that what he wants? Because I think time has shown that LeBron handled it poorly. Now, if Bronny ended up in LA, there would always be that conversation. But it was so blatantly obvious that the Lakers were angling to draft Bronny because LeBron wanted them to. That already you go into the draft process and Bronny, whatever you thought of him, you were going to further diminish him because, it's nepotism. To the point where other teams were told by LeBron's people, don't draft Bronny. How is that a good way to welcome your son into that league? So maybe Deion Sanders would seriously consider coaching his kid. I get that it would be cool to coach your kids, but again, it's just going to seem like Deion Sanders is not able to do anything outside of Shedeur. Like he's just going to ride Shedeur's coattails all the way through the rest of his coaching career. And I didn't think that Deion wanted that. Apparently he's okay with that. But now whether it's the Raiders, whether it's the Giants, whether it's the Browns, now it's going to be they draft Shedeur. All right, they're on the clock to get Shiloh. And once they draft Shiloh, it won't be because, hey, they just so happen to like both Sanders kids. It's going to be an obvious ploy. It will be perceived as an obvious ploy to get Deion Sanders to leave Colorado to coach their team. So there is a situation that could get Deion Sanders out of Boulder. And he spoke it into existence. You draft both of my kids, I'll leave Boulder. And he can say, I'd consider it. All he wants. He's saying, you draft both my sons, you can get me. Now, would teams be willing to do that? And of course, that brings up the whole aspect that is already there. Are the Sanders going to pull a Manning? So you're just further complicating it. I think you're putting your sons, both of them, in a difficult position, especially the one that is not as highly touted as Shedeur is. I don't think it's helpful. I don't think it's helpful to anybody. And even if Deion Sanders was amenable to that idea, I think doing that privately, it's not like he doesn't have the number of these people. You don't think he could reach out to Mark Davis? I've seen the two of them posing in pictures. Back channeling it would be a better way to go about it. But again, as I say that, what am I talking about? Season 3 of Coach Prime, available now on Amazon. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on that back after this. We are streaming the show live today on our social media platforms, as we do when technology allows for it. Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube. They handle all the same at XTRA Sports 1300. Now, the fun aspect of that is you can actually interact right there while you're watching, as Amy Angel, I think it's Amy Angel, says, and I can pull up the comment on the stream. How about that? So you're saying Deion Sanders can't be a legit coach on his own? I am not saying that. In fact, I feel like the growth that Deion Sanders made this season as a coach, especially when it comes to clock management, I thought he got better. So I am not saying at all that he doesn't have the ability to be a good coach on his own. I think he can. And he's done a great job of getting a staff around him that can fill in the blanks, so to speak, or enhance what he's doing. So I think it's gotten better from year one to year two. Deion Sanders, the coach. And I think that there's a very good chance that Deion Sanders can have success at Colorado moving forward, even without Travis Hunter and his sons. But what I am saying is the more he puts it out there that he would be willing to follow Shador and Shiloh, apparently, to the NFL, will give other people license to say Deion Sanders can't coach a team by himself. He needs his son as his quarterback. He's riding his coattails. I'm telling you what other people will say. And I'm saying that perception is harmful. I think that Deion Sanders can stand on his own. I think he can have a successful season in Boulder without a single other Sanders on the roster. But he is saying things that give people license, and there are a lot of haters out there of Deion Sanders, of course, and it's giving them license to be able to say, oh, without his son, he can't win. And this is him acknowledging it by saying, you want me out of Boulder? Draft both of my kids. I'm not saying it. Plenty of other people will say it. And I didn't think that would be something that Deion Sanders would want out there. That's why I thought that this coming year in Boulder would be potentially great for Deion Sanders, because he has a chance to win without Shador, without Shiloh, without Travis Hunter. And it could be, and it would need to be, by the way. Because forget for a moment Deion Sanders' role in all of this. A football team is losing two of the best 5 players in America. That's a lot to lose. So this year would be about how much deeper the Colorado football team has gotten through the portal, through recruiting, how much better of a job the staff will do without the best player in America and the best quarterback in America. Deion Sanders had a chance to prove all of that stuff this upcoming season. Well, might go to the NFL now. But more my point is, and the thing I feel more strongly about, is that it really puts Shiloh especially in a precarious position. If Shador goes, Cleveland, Vegas, Giants. Especially Vegas, with them having a vacancy. And then they happen to draft Shiloh, maybe because they like him. It's entirely possible that a team could draft Shiloh Sanders because they just like him as a football player. But then immediately it will be looked at like Bronny is looked at. You only got drafted because of your last name. It's not a good thing to put on your kid. It's not. Ask my children. The Kaufman name weighs heavy on them. Just the expectations are through the roof. Or the opposite of that. I don't know. I think I did the kids a favor. They're like, oh, you're Ryan's kid? Okay. We don't expect anything. Sticking with the Raiders. So we go from they're not firing anybody on Black Monday. They didn't fire anybody. To, well, they ended up firing Antonio Pierce on Tuesday. But they're keeping Tom Telesco. They're keeping the GM. To now, nope, he's gone too. You know, either Brady's not having the profound impact on the Raiders organization that people thought he would, or he is just as finicky and mercurial as Mark Davis is, apparently. Because why? I could see some reasons why you wouldn't immediately fire people, right? Maybe you really want to think about it. There's nothing written in stone that says you have to fire them the Monday after the final Sunday of the regular season. So it could be a more measured, and certainly it might help to not be looped in with the New England Patriots decision making. But you think about it and you're like, you know what, it's the right call. Okay, if you're going to clean house, then just do it then. Whenever you arrive at the decision, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, a month from now, it looks better. And I don't know why I'm giving out like PR advice today. That was not my intention. But like, it would look better as an organization if you were ultimately going to land on the decision to fire both Antonio Pierce and Tom Telesco, to do it at the same time. Now you have to wonder, did Tom Telesco fire? Like, is it so Mark Davis gets Tom Telesco to fire Antonio Pierce, and then he turns around and fires Tom Telesco? Hey, Tom, Tom Telesco comes into Mark Davis's office and says, okay, Mark, I got it done. Let go Antonio Pierce. And Mark says, okay, thanks. Would you mind hanging tight for a second? Close the door behind you. You're fired too. You know, I would imagine at some point the Raiders don't want to be characterized the way they've been characterized for the vast majority of my life. Especially since Mark Davis took over. Right? It's hard enough for scions to curry favor, for people to not, and we were just talking about this with the Sanders and with Bronny. Right? When you're Al Davis's son, it's very difficult to earn your own positive reputation. It's going to take a while for you not to just be looked at as Al's son. But the way Mark Davis could do it, one, be successful, but two, don't do things that make people think your organization is in disarray, like waiting to fire the head coach and then waiting longer and then ultimately firing the GM. Make your decisions at the same time. You have to wonder, what are the Raiders doing? What new information? Did they watch Good Morning America? Is that what this is about? Mark Davis wasn't going to fire Tom Telesco, and then he watched Deion Sanders on Good Morning America, and he's like, oh, I got to get rid of him too because Deion will want say over drafting both of his sons. Is this Belichick related? No, I just think it's a Raiders thing. That's kind of where I land on it. I think it's a Raiders thing. I could see Mark Davis being like, I don't know if I want to fire either one of them. I think I want to fire Antonio Pierce, but I definitely want to keep Tom Telesco. I mean, the guy did draft Brock Bowers. And then he's like, you know, he's laying awake at night or having breakfast or something. He's like, you know what? No, I want to fire him too. So either somebody is telling him to fire these people, so they'll take the job, or Mark Davis looks like he can't make up his mind. And there is not a candidate. Let's take the former. Is this Ben Johnson related? Because we have to worry here a little bit. Like, I understand Ben Johnson is the number one candidate. Okay? And if your general man, if he wants say over who his general manager is, and you don't love your general manager, then okay. Right? Well, we'll fire a GM. We weren't really married to him anyway. But Ben Johnson, we have to be careful here to not make Ben Johnson look like the second coming of insert the most genius offensive mind in the history of football here. Andy Reid, Mike Mart, whoever you want to throw out there. We have to be a little bit careful here with Ben Johnson to not make him the Messiah. Okay? Ben Johnsons have existed. Not saying he's not a good coach. If I had a vacancy, he would be the number one choice on my list. He's the best candidate. I would agree. But you're going to uproot your entire organization. You're going to fire a GM that it seemed like you liked and seemed like made some good decisions just to bring in Ben Johnson. You have to be a little bit careful here. There is not a single candidate, not Ben Johnson, not Bill Belichick, not Deion Sanders, that is good enough for you to completely rethink what you want your organization to look like and who you want in your organization. Okay, if you like them to be your next head coach, okay. But it seemed like the Raiders at some point were okay with Tom Telesco remaining on, and now they're not. And you got to be careful with placating to these coaches, especially one in Deion Sanders who's never coached in the NFL before, or one in Bill Belichick who was persona non grata just one calendar year ago. Like, what has transpired in the last 365 days that all of a sudden everybody's fawning over Belichick again? I gave my theory yesterday. I think this is negative recruiting towards Belichick as he hits the road with North Carolina. Now I'm always eager to see what the Raiders are going to do. Like, just in general. In my daily life, I wake up in the morning, I'm like, I wonder what the Raiders are going to do today. Every day, I wonder that. Now I'm really intrigued. Because now it's like, okay, is there some changing of minds here? Is there some dissension in the ranks? Is Mark Davis doing something on behalf of somebody? You loop in the Tom Brady aspect. Is he telling Mark Davis to do these things? I think that the Raiders have now, and we have one every offseason, the Raiders have now taken the mantle from the Bears. Last offseason, I think the Bears were arguably the most interesting team, right? They had the number 1 pick. They had multiple top 10 picks. They were going to get Caleb Williams, and it was, okay, what are they going to do at coach and everything? You could throw the Jets in there with Aaron Rodgers coming back and other teams. The Raiders are going to be the most fascinating team not in the postseason. Because I don't know what they're doing or what they're angling for, but it's something. And I don't want to hype it up too much because it is the Raiders. It might fall short of expectation. 719-247-1313. All right, enough about the teams that aren't in the postseason. Let's talk about the teams in the postseason. History would tell you that one underdog will win this weekend in Super Wildcard Round. Is that team the Denver Broncos? That's next on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in Drive Time Sports on this Thursday. Ryan Kaufman with you. You can watch the show, Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube, at XTRA Sports. 1300. Coming up tonight, Avs taking on the Wild. Good thing, I think, that the Avs are right back at it, second night of a back-to-back. Speaking of second nights of a back-to-back, got to talk about the Nuggets as well. Still got plenty of time. Avs and Wild, our coverage from altitude starts at 5:30. In the meantime, taking your thoughts either on our live stream on our social media platforms, you can interact there, or you could text or call into the show at 719-247-1313. Broncos currently, depending on what shop you go to, are either 8.5 or 9-point underdogs on Sunday against the Buffalo Bills. Now, this stat was put out, or this piece of trivia. I don't know if it lives in the world between a stat and a piece of trivia. Adam Schefter tweeted this out, and it comes courtesy of Hembo, who is the chief researcher, does a great job of it, comes up with all sorts of interesting nuggets for ESPN. Adam Schefter tweeted out that underdogs all time, and we're talking about lines here, we're not talking about seeding. Underdogs are 69 and 105 all time on Wild Card Weekend. That is an average of 1.5 upsets per season, and at least one underdog has won a game wild card round in 40 of 46 seasons dating back to 1978. So the first thing I'll point out with this is that second part. There is a chance that no underdogs win this weekend because it has happened before. It's happened 6 times before that no underdogs have won in the wild card round, but it does seem like we're going to have one. We've had enough of these. Now we have even more wild card teams. Perhaps the law of averages kicks in, and with more wild card teams or more teams, period, which means more underdogs, one more chance to have an underdog in each conference. Yeah. Anyway. So, would you, 2 questions, would you, A, take the over or under? How many underdogs, including the Denver Broncos, do you feel like are going to win this weekend? Do you think it will be more than one? Taking the over or the under on that. And then the second part is, which underdog do you feel most strongly about their chances to win this weekend? I have mine because, again, we have to think underdogs in terms of lines. By seeding, the Chargers beating the Texans would be an upset, but the Chargers are favored on the road against Houston. The underdog to me that I think, if you told me one underdog is going to win this weekend, I would take the Rams. I would take the Rams against the Minnesota Vikings. Because what happened last week, this past weekend, is that the Detroit Lions and Aaron Glenn went back to that fateful day when Sam Darnold sat at his locker or the podium, I don't remember which it was, and he proclaimed that he was seeing ghosts. Remember that game when he was with the Jets? They were playing the Patriots. Belichick had him seeing ghosts. What was that? There's a little defense called Cover Zero. That is, we are going to bring everybody at you. That's what Aaron Glenn did against Sam Darnold. And Sam Darnold looked like, to be fair, how Sam Darnold has looked the majority of his career. Now, Sam Darnold has certainly shown that the Jets are a bigger reason why he failed than Sam Darnold is, right? The Jets failed Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold did not fail the Jets. But could Sam Darnold have been exposed by the Detroit Lions? And so I would be curious to see if Sean McVay and the Rams pull up that game film, look at exactly what Aaron Glenn did, and said, wait a minute, we got better pass rushers than Detroit does. Remember, no Aiden Hutchinson. We have Jared Verse, we have Fisk, we have all these FSU guys that we drafted. If we do that, we might have more success than Detroit did. And then, of course, you look at the other side of the football, and you have, everyone got fixated on Cincinnati, right? Everyone through the latter stages of the season got fixated on Cincinnati. Oh, don't let Cincinnati in. Don't let Joe Burrow in. I haven't heard nearly as much talk about the team that beat Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals in the Super Bowl. To me, if there is an underdog that can get hot that we could look at here in a couple weeks and go, where did they come from? It's LA. They still have Stafford. They have Kupp. Now they have Nakua, and they've got Kyron Williams running the football well. And pending what the league decides as far as, whether they're going to move the game, they're still considering moving the game to Arizona still. That's closer to LA than it is Minneapolis. Maybe changes the home field, but I don't know that the Rams have one of the better home field advantages in the league. I think there's going to be a lot of purple at this game regardless. I'm looking at it from the team's perspective. I don't think that we can just dismiss what happened on Sunday between the Lions and the Vikings. So if you told me one underdog is going to win this week, I'm taking the Rams. Outside of that, though, I don't know that I would take another underdog. Because, again, we're not talking about covering. Okay, that's a different conversation. We're talking about outright winning. You have Houston, which I think for some people would be the easy place to go, or where don't want to say easy. It would be the place that they would go. Would be to take Houston over the Chargers. I'm not. And I'm not entirely sold on the idea that the Chargers aren't the most dangerous team to Kansas City. Buffalo's, I would say, more talented. Josh Allen's better than Justin Herbert. Lamar Jackson's better than Justin Herbert. Baltimore Ravens have more. But you know what happens with Buffalo and Baltimore when they go up against Kansas City. And what I see with the Chargers is they always play Kansas City close, and it is really hard to beat a team 3 times in 1 year. So I'm not so sure that the biggest threat to Kansas City in the AFC isn't their own division rival. And I saw the text yesterday. Don't tell me that that's if the Broncos get by Buffalo, that you don't think they would be the biggest threat to Kansas City. You may already believe it, that Denver would be the biggest threat to Kansas City for the very same reason I'm saying LA would be. Now, the Broncos did beat the Chiefs week 18, but we know what that is. But the idea, division rival, played them close. In fact, they were a blocked field goal away from beating Kansas City. I know a lot of Broncos fans. I see you out there saying if we get past Buffalo, we're getting past Kansas City. And I understand that. I disagree with you, but I understand it. In a lot of ways, I think the Chargers are a better version of the Denver Broncos. Not in every way, shape, or form, but they both incredibly well coached, both like to try and win in the margins. They both want to kind of take the air out of the football, control the clock, sustain drives. But when it comes down to it, late in the game, Chargers have Herbert, and the Broncos, as great as Bo Nix has been this season, he's not Justin Herbert. So I understand the reasoning for thinking that if Denver can get by Buffalo, that they can also get by Kansas City. Because that's the very same reasoning I'm putting into place to say I think the Chargers are the biggest threat to Kansas City in the AFC. But I'm not taking I'm taking the Chargers to win. And then we'll get that matchup most likely, unless the Denver Broncos win. And don't even get me started. I'll tell you one underdog that I give a 9% chance, and that is Pittsburgh. If I was doing a confidence level in all of these underdogs, the Steelers would be at the bottom. So take that. You think that I always hate on the Denver Broncos. There is a team in these playoffs that I feel less good about in their matchup than the Denver Broncos. It's Pittsburgh. I give them 0 chance to beat the Baltimore Ravens. I give the Broncos slightly more than 0 chance to beat the Buffalo Bills. I don't think that any of these other underdogs are going to win. I know there's a lot of consternation right now with Philadelphia. Oh, Jalen Hurts. We just saw a video the other day that Jordan Love elbow is like messed up or something. I think the Packers, you want to talk about fumbling? You want to talk about blowing it the final week? Oh, the Packers. Oh, you don't come back from that. You lose to your hated rival, the Chicago Bears, the last day of the season, and you end up drawing the Philadelphia Eagles because of it. Yeah, no, I'm not taking the Packers. And I think Tampa beats Washington. I do. I think the Bucs win. I don't think we're going to get either of these rookie quarterbacks beyond this weekend. So I'll take the under 1.5. I think it's one underdog that wins, and I think it's Monday night, and it's the Rams. What say you? 719-24-7. 13-13. 1.5 upsets. What does a half an upset look like? Perhaps losing close to a favorite team. Over under 1.5 upsets this weekend in Super Wildcard Weekend. And what team or teams do you think win? Obviously, I'd be curious to see if the Broncos are on your list. 719-24-7, 1313. You know, I don't appreciate what you're trying to do here. And it's, every day it's somebody different. Today it's you, Brett, on the text line, 709-247-1313. You make a comment like, I hope the 5 o'clock hour can be Patrick Mahomes tribute hour. I'll hang up and listen. All right. You perpetuate this idea that I make the show about the Chiefs, but all I'm doing is responding to your text message. And then I got other people getting at me on the text line or approaching me on the street and saying the Broncos are in the playoffs and all you want to talk about is the Chiefs. I'm answering, and it was Tucker. It was you the other day, Tucker. I got goaded into it. I was going to talk. Spent the whole first segment talking about the Denver Broncos and them clinching the playoffs. And then Tucker brings up that he doesn't like that the Chiefs just laid down like that. I responded. I talked. This is an interactive show. And because it's me, it automatically, he's just making it. It's not about the Chiefs. I've just spent 2 segments talking about the Chiefs as it pertains to their game against the Denver Broncos. It's kind of relevant. I just brought them up. Why? Because people want to know who the biggest threat to Kansas City is. And I related it back to the Denver Broncos. You guys get me in trouble. And I know that's what you're trying to do. Guys are crafty. Tom Texas, AM 1300. Chiefs radio, all Chiefs all the time. The Patrick Mahomes, if you will, of the NHL, Nathan McKinnon, and the Colorado Avalanche, you guys just, that's not what I do. You got just twist the knife. So last night, the Patrick Mahomes of the NHL, which is Nathan McKinnon, and could not help the Avs win a hockey game, and the Nuggets played without the Patrick Mahomes of the NBA, which is Nikola Jokic. No, but seriously, that's how it happened. The Avs spoiled the debut of Trent Miner, or not the debut. He filled in a pinch against Washington. That was his first NHL start. And the Avs didn't do the young man any favors because they did the thing that they so often do. It's not an endearing quality, but it's born out of the fact that they have so much talent. They overpass. They overpass. They're too unselfish at times. They're like, I got Kel McCarr streaking down the left side. I'm going to pass the no, you can shoot. Or I got to get to Nathan McKinnon. They do that sometimes. It's every 5 games, every 10 games. It pops up with the Avs every now and again where you're looking at them and you're like, just take the shot. Just take the shot. There's something to be said for making the extra pass that gets you a better look, and it applies to basketball and to hockey. But sometimes you just got to take the shot yourself. And I thought last night the Avs got into that mode a little bit where they were passing up some decent chances, trying to get a great chance. And credit to Mrazek. I'm watching that game last night. I'm like, hasn't Peter Mrazek done this to the Avs before? If there's goalies, and we used to say on this show, the Avs got Ottingered because there was a time where Jake Ottinger, when he was a backup, now he's one of the best goalies in the NHL. We knew him when he was just a mere backup and he was thrust into duty against the Avs and he shut them down. Get Ottingered. I felt like watching that game last night that I remember the Avs getting Mrazek'd before, which is not to be confused with getting Mrazed, which is that one song that Jason Mraz sang all those years ago gets played. It's like Rick rolling, except it's with Jason Mraz. That was I Don't Want to Worry My Life Away, right? That was his song. Anyway, I feel like I've seen before Peter Mrazek shutting down the Colorado Avalanche. So because of the wonder that is the internet, I went back and looked. Not really. There was a game, I think it was last year, where he did it. But it's like Mrazek's goals allowed against the Avs. It was like 2, or like before it was like 4, and then it was 2, and then it was like 5, and then 5, and then this one last night where he gives up 1. Just felt like it. Those kind of, when you get goalied, and I think that's part of it, the Avs kind of overpassed and got a little too cute, I thought, last night. Jared Bednar said he didn't think his team finished their chances. When you get goalied, it tends to stick with you, especially when the guy you get goalied by, and it's usually, nobody says they got goalied by Martin Brodeur. Like, you didn't get goalied, you got Brodeured. That's one of the greatest goalies of all time. When you get goalied, it's really a lesser goaltender that shuts you down. But when that happens, it tends to stick in your mind. You're like, I remember that guy doing that to the Avs. And Peter Mrazek has. It's just there were some other games in there where the Avs torched him. So I guess the saying is the losses stick with you more than the wins. I guess it applies. When you get goalied, it sticks with you more than when the team that you watch or cover or root for just houses a lesser goaltender. So last night, not great. Would have been good for the Avs to get Trent Miner that win. But I agree with the way that Jared Bednar's handling this. Because, yes, that's a division game last night. They're still in a situation, Cale Makar talked about it the other night after the Florida game, that they weren't satisfied with where they were in the standings. There's more work to do. That's a game where certainly you feel like the Avs need to come away with 2 points, whether that game's in Chicago or in Denver. But you got a back-to-back, and tonight you're going against Minnesota, a team ahead of you in the standings, with one of the few guys on the list for the Hart Trophy in Kirill Kaprizov. You need to give Mackenzie Blackwood a rest because of the injury to Wedgwood. You haven't been able to go back and give Mackenzie Blackwood a night off. That was the night to do it against Chicago. And it seems like so often that the Avs choose to do that against Chicago. With all due respect to the Blackhawks, which is almost none, you know who you are as a team, and you know that the Avs are right to put in their backup goaltender against you. Defensively, the Avs were fine. I thought Trent Miner was fine. Just only 1 goal against Peter Mrazek. Got to do more. But if in the aggregate they go out tonight in Minnesota with Mackenzie Blackwood in goal, get a win, it's a bigger win to beat Minnesota certainly than it is Chicago. Because, yes, you gave up 2 divisional points, but you gave it to a team that is not going – you're not going to have to deal with when it comes to playoff seeding. Would have been nice to win, but these are the decisions that Jared Bednar faces. Got to give Mackenzie Blackwood a night. And would you rather have him last night against the Chicago Blackhawks, or would you rather have him tonight against Minnesota? He made the right call. Unfortunately, the Avs couldn't get it done last night. They'll be right back at it tonight, 6 o'clock puck drop in Minneapolis or St. Paul. I forget where, one stadium's here, the Wolves play here and the Vikings play here in the Twin City area. 6 o'clock is puck drop, and you can hear it right here on Extra Sports 1300. Now, mention the Nuggets. Want to talk about them as well coming up. Also, your thoughts on Super Wild Card Weekend. History says we're going to get one upset. One underdog in Vegas's eyes will win this weekend. That's what history says. Which one you taking? More on that next here on Extra Sports 1300. We are getting closer to Super Wild Card Weekend. And history says one betting underdog will come out victorious. We may get two. Which teams would they be, in your opinion? 719-247-1313. Here are your betting underdogs as of right now. The Houston Texans, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Denver Broncos, the Green Bay Packers, the Washington Commanders, and the LA Rams. The last of those is who I am going with. I think for whatever reason, everyone got fixated on the Cincinnati Bengals, and people forgot about the team that ended up beating them in that Super Bowl. They can get pretty hot too. And they've had a really good season. I know a lot of their success has come as a direct result of the rough season San Francisco has had, but LA's good. He's a good team. Dynamic offense. And you have to wonder. You've seen so much of Sam Darnold, as great as he has been this year, and he has absolutely been that. You've seen a lot of bad Sam Darnold, and you got to wonder a little bit with what Detroit did to him on Sunday, whether the Rams copy paste, and then with Stafford, Nakua, Kupp, and now Kyron Williams. That's who I would go with. Taking your thoughts on that. Angel says, why not Houston? Says Houston steps up in the play. Absolutely. Look at what they did to Cleveland last year. If I had to go to team, I feel like Steve Martin on the Christmas Wish. If I had two underdogs to pick this weekend, I'd take the LA Rams 1, and I take the Texans 2. I do think that the Texans have the ability to beat the LA Chargers. I do. I think, though, that the Chargers will win. But Houston is not a bad pick. I think both of those games were with the LA teams are the most evenly matched of this Super Wild Card round. And people would probably, the next one, I'd probably hear some Washington Commanders. I expected to. I have this feeling. I think Tampa Bay is the more complete team. They've done it before. And that stuff matters. I have this feeling that Tampa's going to win. I do, but that would be, and I've seen it. That's a trendy upset pick, is Washington going into Tampa. And by the way, not a lot of rain in the forecast, which ironically would, I think, actually benefit Washington. You would think, well, Tampa dealing with the element. I think because of who Washington is and the way they like to run the football in their offense, I actually think a soggy track, so to speak, would be more beneficial to the Commanders than it would be the more spread them out, slinging around the yard attack that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers employ, although Bucky Irving has become quite the revelation for them. So I like Tampa in that game, but I've seen a lot of people taking Washington. Houston can absolutely win. But I'm taking the Chargers because the way that LA plays, They look to limit the amount of possessions. They don't want to give you a lot of bites at the apple because they feel like with their quarterback, they can make the most of their few possessions. And it's worked. That's been the formula for this Chargers team. Not as many series, close game, win on the margins, and Justin Herbert for most of the game doesn't really do a ton. And the Broncos, you saw this with the Broncos firsthand. That game in LA is quintessential Chargers. It's what they've been doing all season. Win in the margins, keep it close. Late in the game, Justin Herbert come up with the big throw. And right now, I trust Justin Herbert more than I trust CJ Stroud in that kind of a situation. I think this game is close. But if it's close, I'm taking the Chargers. Take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. So, Nuggets last night, second night of a back-to-back. Couple of things. Again, they were without Nikola Jokic. Again, I thought it looked much like the Boston game in that I saw a Nuggets team that was playing incredibly hard, a bunch of guys saying, I got to step up my game. And even Dario Saric, I thought, logged some good minutes. He couldn't get out of the game. Michael Malone couldn't get him out of the game fast enough against Boston. Dario Saric played pretty well. But my biggest takeaway last night, and it goes right to what I was talking about the Boston game. The Denver Nuggets last night made 17 of their 35 three-pointers. They shot 49% from deep. This after, now they tapered off in the second half against Boston, but the first two quarters, they outshot the Celtics. They out-Celtic the Celtics. And I said, maybe it's choice. Maybe some of this, and I believe that for a while that there is more of an unwillingness from the Denver Nuggets to shoot three-pointers than there is an inability. I get it. They're not a very good three-point shooting team. Right? Game on the line, you need a three. How many Nuggets are you going to trust? Porter, Jokic, that's the list. So I get it. They're not a great three-point shooting team. But they're the third most efficient three-point shooting team. Let's push that a little bit. Get a few more shots up. I don't know that 35 is the right number, but when you're shooting 49%, you would hope that the Nuggets would keep jacking them up. Maybe the Nuggets can shoot the three a little bit better than they're letting on, than they're showing. And because they don't have as many easy looks around the rim, because they don't have Nikola Jokic on the floor, they have no choice. And lo and behold, they knock him down. Other thing of note from that one, Nuggets have not lost the second game of a back-to-back this season. And there is maybe no coach in the NBA that complains more about scheduling than Michael Malone. And you understand it, right? The only two coaches that have even something close to a legitimate gripe when it comes to the scheduling is Michael Malone and Will Hardy, right? The two teams in the Mountain Time Zone, look at their schedule compared to these other teams. They get the back-to-backs. They have the weird travel schedule, and It's just it's a balanced schedule, but it's not when you're one of the two teams that reside in the Mountain Time Zone. Utah and Denver have more of a reason to complain than anybody else in the NBA. But yet 8-0, I believe, is the number now. 8-0 on the second night of a back-to-back. That's not a small. It's a smallish sample size. It's not a small sample size. I think the anecdotal evidence of why they're so good on the second night of a back-to-back would be who they're playing. I mean, just look at this particular back-to-back. You go from Boston to the Clippers. Right? They didn't play nearly as good of a team, but the Clippers were a team that has given the Nuggets some fits. So you could look back and see what team they play on the second night of a back-to-back, and maybe there's a case to be made that they just so happen to play a lesser team, and that's why they're able to win. But I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the Nuggets seem to play a lot of back-to-backs. And they kind of know their way around these things. Know what to expect. Attack these games accordingly. Nuggets routinely are one of the teams in the NBA with the most back-to-backs, and maybe here's the benefit of that. The unintended benefit is that the Nuggets are very good on the second night of a back-to-back. Be interesting. When is the next time that the Denver Nuggets play a back-to-back? That would be... Oh, you don't have to wait long. They will play Dallas in Dallas on Tuesday and turn around on Wednesday and host Houston. That would be a good one to test it because Houston, I think, is a better team than the Clippers. Who else have they played second night of a back-to-back? San Antonio, they're better than them. Detroit was another second night of a back-to-back. Phoenix was the second night of a back-to-back when they won at home. Where are the other ones? Atlanta. They were definitely going to win that one. Remember, that was the one after the Washington game. And then the Lakers in LA was one of them. And Utah, Brooklyn. Those are the... Houston might be the best team the Nuggets will play on a second night of a back-to-back this season. So we'll see. But something to watch out for, certainly, for next week. And DeAndre Jordan, here's the other part. DeAndre Jordan, get back to Von Miller's revenge game, quote-unquote, coming up after the top of the hour with the three stories that are driving the show. DeAndre Jordan does his best work against the Clippers. I was looking at this last night. So we had 9 rebounds last night. That is tied for the season high. The other game that he had 9 rebounds was against the Clippers. His 12 points last night was the most he's had for the Nuggets in a game in over a year. Late November of 2023 was the last time he put up at least 12 points. And it was a 21-point effort. And you remember that game well because he and Reggie Jackson together were playing a throwback game when the two of them both have played for the Clippers. And the two of them, you remember that game, they were lighting it up. Also against the Clippers. So if the Nuggets end up playing the LA Clippers in the playoffs, DeAndre Jordan must get increased minutes. Which, if they're going to employ Aaron Gordon as the backup 5, but maybe just play straight up, put DeAndre Jordan as the backup to Nikola Jokic, because he seems like he does his best work against his former team. I'm watching here in studio, to shift gears a little bit here before the top of the hour, Notre Dame taking on Penn State for a spot in the Natty. That's coming up here this evening. Actually, coming up right as I'm off the air for 50. Thank you, ESPN. 54 and a half minutes. This one is definitely a toss-up. I think there is a lot of sentiment going to Notre Dame's favor when it comes to the betting line. I think some sentiment, maybe it's anti-James Franklin sentiment, because there's no doubt that if James Franklin wins tonight, if Penn State wins tonight, that is James Franklin's big game that he's won. Not the last two. I said it when the bracket was announced, when the playoff was announced, Penn State should waltz to this game that they're playing tonight. They had SMU and they had Boise State. Nobody had a better draw in the playoffs than Penn State. And now it gets real. And I think that's kind of, a lot of people are feeling that way. But now this game is basically a toss-up. I think it's a 1 point to Notre Dame. Notre Dame's a 1 point favorite. I was sitting here watching Notre Dame play in the last round during this show, because obviously it got rescheduled. I watched Notre Dame's defense fly around. They were causing all sorts of problems. And I think they could do a lot of that tonight. And while Drew Aller is probably a better quarterback, more talented quarterback, I'll say, than Riley Leonard. Riley Leonard's a good quarterback. And I like Notre Dame. But this one certainly could go either way. Tomorrow, yeah. I feel much better about tomorrow's outcome than I do tonight's. I could see Penn State winning. I don't see Texas beating Ohio State. I don't see that. So that game coming up 5:30. So does our coverage of Avs and Wild. So still some time left for you to get in your thoughts on this Thursday, 719-24-7-1313. The three stories that are driving the show coming up next. Hello there. Welcome in. Thursday is the day. Drive Time Sports is the show. I'm Ryan Kaufman. Pleasure to have you. Whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the free Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health. Mental health and well-being for all. We are inching ever so much closer to a much anticipated start of the NFL playoffs in these parts. But we got plenty to take our attention until then. First national semifinal in 45 minutes between Penn State and Notre Dame. Avs and Wild tonight on a more local front. Our coverage begins at the bottom of this hour. But we still are very much looking forward to the weekend, and perhaps members of the Broncos and the Bills looking even more forward to playing each other. That is the first of the three stories that are driving the show. All right, story number one. Von Miller revenge game?
It's all love. I can't even start to play that delusion of it's hatred or I can't even start to play that game. That I will put myself so far in a place that's not even close to being reality. That would be it would be hurtful to the way I want to play. I love those guys. I love everything about the Denver Broncos. I pay close attention to the Denver Broncos.
So no Von Miller revenge game, nor should it be. Because if you recall, the Denver Broncos, while they lost the trade because they took the 2 picks they received and immediately gave them to Seattle in exchange for failed quarterback Russell Wilson, they did Von Miller a favor. At that time, Von Miller was still at the top of his game, still a guy that could contribute to a Super Bowl winning team, as he turned out to be for the LA Rams. And the Broncos were a team at the time going nowhere and needing to rebuild. When the intersection of one player's career and your franchise trajectory are at those 2 points, you trade a player like that. And the Broncos did. It was the right move then. It was the right move now. And it was right for the Broncos, and it was right for Von Miller. What George Paton did with those picks is another story. But the Broncos made the right call, and Von Miller's career, Von Miller's legacy was further enhanced by him going to LA than continuing to waste away with the Broncos organization that was going nowhere. So there should be no animosity. There should be no ill will. Broncos did right by Von Miller. They did what was in the best interest of their organization, but it is a fun storyline to look forward to. And on more than one occasion, he's going to be going up against one of the few now Denver Broncos they actually played with, which is Garrett Bowles. But for the Denver Broncos, and Bowles talked about this, they don't need to pay any mind to any such storyline. Right? They have their hands full. They are going to do something quite incomparable if they are improbable if they go into Buffalo and win. They need to focus on that. They can do the jersey swap after the game. They can't spend much time thinking about anything else than what problem Von Miller presents with the Buffalo Bills defense, which is, I would say, in a spot, in a big moment, I think you have to be a little bit worried about Von Miller. He's not the Von Miller that he was in Denver. But still, third down and long, maybe just don't get in them just to not tempt fate there. Certainly Von Miller is not at the top of the list of the biggest worries for Sean Payton and the Broncos going into Sunday, but it is interesting that now Von Miller and the Broncos are meeting up on this stage. Perfect story for the middle of the week as we wait and count down the hours and the minutes and the days until this playoff matchup does indeed happen. Here is story number 2. Deion Sanders not helping himself.
But is there a chance that you could head to the NFL?
I know where you're going. you try to go viral, right? Yeah. If I respond, you know we're going viral, right?
I know, right?
You know what? The only way I would consider is to coach my son. Not son. No. Sons. Okay.
Deion Sanders on Good Morning America, as much as he has tried to, at least in his words, say he's not leaving Colorado for any reason, he goes on Good Morning America and gives an out. And I don't think that it is good for anybody that he said what he said. And I could name it. It's not good for Colorado. Certainly. I don't think it's good for Deion Sanders because he has a chance this year in Boulder to show that he is capable of winning games with quarterbacks other than his son. And I don't think it's a fair criticism, but you're not going to be able to silence those critics unless you win without a quarterback not named Sanders. I thought he wanted to do that. I thought he wanted to, and it's weird to talk about a dad carving out his own legacy, but that's kind of where we're at. Does he want to carve out his own legacy independent of his son and also allow his son to carve out his own legacy? He's always going to be Deion's son, but does he have to share the locker room with him? Share a plane with him? But the guy that I think gets most hurt by this is Shiloh Sanders, who essentially becomes Bronny James. Now, I'm not saying that in terms of the talent that Shiloh is, because I do think he is a more talented football player than Bronny James is a basketball player. But with LeBron's vocal desire to play with his son, it immediately discounted Bronny. And it became, no matter what you are, you're a Nepo baby. It's what you are. Your dad wants you to play with him, and so the Lakers did it. It has nothing to do with how good of a player you are, and it has everything to do with who your dad is. And now it's the same thing with Shiloh, because Shedeur can be drafted to a lot of places. Like, Shedeur is a prospect in this draft that a lot of teams are going to be interested in. Shedeur has the ability to be looked at as more than Deion Sanders' son, unless Deion ends up coaching him in the NFL, and then it's going to be hard for him to shake. But Shiloh is the lesser of the two players. Shiloh is the late day 2, early day 3 guy. Kind of think that's where he is. If whatever team drafts Shedeur ends up drafting Shiloh, even if they are drafting Shiloh because they legitimately want him to play safety for them, it's immediately going to be looked at as, oh, you're just drafting him for Deion. Either because the other part that's already out there is that Deion wants to pull an Archie Manning and say, my son's not going here. So now you already wonder if the team that drafts Shedeur is only able to draft Shador because they have made a promise to Dion that they'll also take Shiloh. As difficult of a promise as that is to uphold, but there's going to be that anyway. So it's like, even if you like Shiloh as a player, you almost can't draft him if you draft Shador. I mean, it won't stop teams, but I'm just saying to avoid that perception. I just don't think it helps. It doesn't help anybody. What does this do? Who benefits from this? Deion Sanders, the brand. Deion Sanders, the television product benefits. That's it. That's it. He likes having this stuff out here. I can tell him blue in the face that this doesn't help his reputation. This doesn't quiet down the criticism. He don't care. He don't care. No matter how serious or unserious you may think he is about what you just heard, he wants it out there. He does. Gets clicks, gets views. I hate to sound like Dan Lanning, but let's be honest, there's a little bit of that. A little bit of that going on. It's not solely for those purposes. Deion Sanders' existence as a head coach in college football, certainly. But sometimes it is kind of about the clicks. And he even noted that at the beginning and then still went on to say what he said. Here's story number 3.
Teravainen. Stick handles around Casey Middlestat. One-timer, save made minor, and rebound is put in by Frank Nazar. Of course, it goes that way. Of course.
Oh, my boy Connor was going through it last night. Connor McGahey on the Altitude Radio Network, as heard on Extra Sports 1300. Avs had one of those games. One of those games where it felt like no matter how good the chances were, they couldn't get them into the net. And immediately, and that sequence was a perfect example. Avs had like 3 or 4 shots in on Peter Mrazek, couldn't get it to go. And then immediately Chicago goes down to the other end of the ice and beats Trent Miner, who is making his first NHL start. 3-1, Avs fall in Chicago. Not ideal. This is a team that is hotter than anyone in the NHL. That's not a speed bump you want to hit. But I think ultimately what cost them was they got into that mode where they pass it one too many times. Like there are times I watch the Colorado Avalanche and all of a sudden Sweet Georgia Brown starts playing in my head. Like it's just sometimes I know they're not doing, this isn't what they're doing. It just looks like they're trying to put on like a passing exhibition. Like, look, I'll pass it to McKinnon, to pass it to McCarr, to pass to Mikko, to pass back to McKinnon, to Val Nichushkin. Too many passes. And the other half of the equation is Peter Mrazek was pretty dang good last night. Little bit of the Avs getting goalied. You have to say it. But what part they played in their demise last night, too many passes. Now, tonight is the bigger one. I will say that. Don't like to see the Avs fall given how hot they had been and how much they want to continue to accumulate points. But last night was one of those, you got to put in the young guy. Got to give Mackenzie Blackwood a night off because this is the big one. Minnesota coming into play tonight. Second place in the Central. Avs behind them. They need these 2 points more than they need the 2 points last night. Mackenzie Blackwood in goal, Kirill Kaprizov, Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, the whole crew. Should be a good one tonight in Minnesota. Our coverage starts at the bottom of the hour. That means you and I have one more segment together today. 719-247-1313. Get in your last minute thoughts, and then it'll be Avs Wild here on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome back. Before we get to Avs and Wild here on Extra Sports 1300, want to debut a new regular segment of the show, which I love to have because there are very few people that want to routinely join me on this show. And that may turn out to be the case, but with this guest, we'll give it a whirl. Jeff Haber from 98.9 Magic FM popping in because of our new segment, Magic Money Lines, presented by ESPN Bet. Every week, Jeff's going to come in. He's going to give me the bets that he loves the most this weekend, and I will either agree or disagree with them. So, Jeff, first of all, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Yep.
Excited to be here.
And a reminder, you can listen to Jeff during this very time slot. Not that I like to direct
I would
people
say,
away.
don't do that. Don't do that. Keep listening
Does
to
a
Ryan.
great job on 98.9 Magic FM when he is on. I'll let you figure out when he is. All right. So this weekend, Super Wild Card weekend, of course, I've been asking the question today, and I think you are the perfect person to pose this question to. History says, in fact, this came from ESPN's research department, that on average, we get 1.5 upsets every wild card round. I don't know what the half an upset would look like. So that says history would dictate that one betting underdog this weekend will win. The choices are, just for those of you listening, the Texans, the Steelers, the Broncos, obviously, Green Bay, Washington, and LA, the NFC LA team. So, Jeff Haber.
Yes.
If I told you that one of those betting underdogs was going to win this weekend, which one would it be?
As much as I would love to be a homer and say the Broncos, plus 340 on ESPN Bet, I think it's the Commanders. Jaden Daniels has looked so good. He's really got his wide receivers in check. 2 touchdowns to Zach Ertz 2 weeks ago. So he's back on track with his favorite tight end. To me, I think he's got the experience. I know he's a rookie, but his time at LSU makes me think he's playoff ready. And this is, I think, a Buccaneers team that I think is going to let a rookie quarterback get into the, second round.
Yeah. What is Washington on the money line?
Plus 140.
Oh, okay. So plus 140 and getting 3, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I talked about, you weren't in here, but I'll just with I think that Tampa overall is the more complete team. While the rookie status of Jaden Daniels is not scaring you away, it does scare me away a little bit, but I would extend it beyond that. You know, Washington as a team, a lot of them have not been here. Tampa has been to the playoffs the last couple of years. I will say the one X factor for that game would be, people think that if rain is in the forecast, that actually benefits Tampa. I think it actually benefits Washington with how Jaden Daniels runs the ball, with how much they rely on the run. I think that some precipitation could actually help Washington. That's certainly a solid one. I said the Rams. That's the one I'm going with. I think Darnold might be seeing ghosts again after what Detroit did to him the other night. I think the Rams might just copy and paste Aaron Glenn's defensive game plan. And with Stafford, just like you're talking about with Jaden Daniels getting on the same page with Ertz and some of his other weapons, you have Stafford, you have Nakua, you have Cooper Kupp, and now you have the emergence of Kyron Williams the last couple of weeks as a running back. I think the Rams. If I were to pose to you, Jeff Haber.
I just want to point out, too,
go.
Rams beat the Vikings earlier this year. So I think that's a great underdog bet to make as well, just because, look, the Vikings lost to the Lions last week.
Yes.
And so they're coming off a loss, not feeling great about themselves, and now they're going up against a team that they lost to earlier in the year. I'm pretty confident too in Rams as well. So yeah, continue.
Oh, what? Well, then you answer my next question, which I was going to say, if we go take the over on the 1.5,
it's Rams.
You would say Rams.
I would be taking the Rams. And I think just because they beat the Vikings earlier this year, it does seem, and this could be a total, like, biased, recency bias thing. I always feel like when teams win against, early in the year, it just carries over to the playoffs. They use the same game scheme. They know kind of like what to expect second time out, so they can come out. I don't know. Rams putting up 30 points against the Vikings earlier in the year is a good number.
Let's go this way, because I did this a little bit in the minute I have left with you, Jeff. Which underdog is there no way? If I told you the stat was the other way, that every betting underdog would win this weekend except for one, what is the one that you're like, no way am I backing them no matter what?
It's the Broncos.
you're
But
not.
The Broncos are going to. You're saying if there's one that is going to lose?
Right. I said the one that there would be no way that you would bet on. 0% chance.
So Broncos, I'll put this. Broncos aren't winning, but I would put money down because it's plus 340. So it's such a huge money line. Never say never.
Right.
So
the one I'm saying is, they might be the only one below Denver, in my opinion. There is a 0% chance that Pittsburgh goes into Baltimore.
That was the other one. Yeah, no, I can't see Russell Wilson, even with off his performance, going up against. There was a time earlier in the season where the Ravens weren't playing as well, and you're kind of thinking, oh, maybe this isn't the team we thought they were, but they've really picked it up the second half. Yeah. So there's no way Steelers are winning either.
Well, that's so follow or fade Jeff and I, depending. The choice is yours. That's always the choice. Fade or follow us.
I would put, Steelers right now are plus 360 as well. You put a small bet on the Steelers and on the Broncos. You never know. You never know.
That's right. And as Jeff would tell you and has been telling you on this station, you could do your betting on the new ESPN Sportsbook, and customers that are new to ESPN Bet Sportsbook can get up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win, and unlock 30 days of ESPN Plus as well. You can download the app, sign up with promo code radio to get started today. Obviously, 21 or older, present in Colorado to bet. If you have a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Jeff, appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks for having me on, Ryan.
And that will be it for me today. Coming up right now, enjoy Avs and Wild on Extra Sports 1300.
Not going to lie, I was shocked